Hey, this is Michael Emery. Thanks for tuning into the Slow Baja. This podcast is powered by Tequila Fortaleza, handmade in small batches, and hands down, my favorite tequila. Slow Baja is brought to you by the Baja XL Rally. The Baja XL is the largest and longest amateur off-road rally on the Baja Peninsula. It's 10 epic days, LA to Cabo to LA. Check it out at bajaxl.org. It's Michael Emery, and I am Slow Baja, and I'm delighted to be on a Zoom call today with Tim and Kelsey Huber. They're in Gillette, Wyoming. They are overlanders extraordinaire with Dirt Sunrise, driving a 1995 FJZ. It's an FJZ 80, right?
FZJ, but yeah, I mean,
FZJ. I always call them FJ 80s, but those Land Cruiser nerds, they just need to know exactly what it is.
I tell you, they won't stop.
All right. Well, we can't jump into Land Cruiser nerddom yet, but we'll get there. Hey, you're two ordinary people living an extraordinary life, is what you say. So let's just jump into it. How did the whole thing get started?
We were just like everybody else, off-roading as much as we can, exploring. I just felt like over the years, we never want to end the trips, right? Not that anyone does, but we're always looking for ways to make the trips a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And, I kind of got interested in going. I think my first international trip was probably Baja, going down for like Habitat for Humanity or something as a kid, and school trips. And then Buddy and I built a race car, started racing. And then it was like, I don't know, we just wanted more of that. And since we met, we just tried to make the trips longer and longer, and kept saving and saving until we realized, are we ever going to just go? Like, we see these other people doing this. Are we going to go, or are we going to be people who just talk about it?
Yeah, we always had, these dreams of like, oh, that would be so cool. And then we kind of talked and we're like, well, why not do them? Why not try for them? Because we were just working, regular office jobs and dreaming of this kind of lifestyle, and just decided, let's go for it. Let's try it.
I think too, it kind of aided us. Like I've taught at Overland Expos. Some friends started that like in, I don't know what it was, like 12, 13 years ago. And so I've been teaching there since it started. And so you meet all these really great people, and then they go off and do their trips, and they come back and they're like, yeah, so this last year I was in Africa, and then I went to Australia. And you're like, cool. And you're happy for them, but there's a little party that's going, damn it, when am I going to go? So that was eating at us too, I think. And so I think when the fear that we may never go, like we would just get more comfy and, keep working, was greater than the fear of what'll happen if we quit our jobs and, have no health insurance and go for it. When the fear of not doing it was greater than the fear of going, we kind of just looked at each other and went, all right, 1 year out, let's go nuts and sell everything we can and do this.
And so that was the genesis. 1 year, you gave yourself a year to make it all happen.
Yeah. And we told nobody. I mean, even close friends, I think some were a little bit like, hey, why wouldn't you confide in me? It's like, look, I didn't want to profess we are going on this trip and we're going to go to the tip of South America. Even when we were halfway through the trip, we still were not saying like publicly, like, I'd really like to get all the way to Ushuaia or Patagonia, because we just didn't know, if the engine blew tomorrow, we wanted to feel like we could just turn around and come home and go back to work if that's what we needed to do. So we just kind of quietly sold things off. And we've always been the types that on weekends and holidays, if we can do something that earns us money, we'll do that over a trip. And so we were always doing anything we could, buying old dirt bikes and cleaning them up and flipping them, or working side jobs. All those side jobs have become our only jobs now. So now we have like 7 side jobs that have become what we do when we're not on the trip, trying to pay for it and save for the next leg. So, yeah.
Hey, Kelsey, how did you two meet?
We actually met at Overland Expo, which is really random. I was working for Overland Journal, and I was happened to be at the event running their booth and doing all of that. And Tim has been instructing there since the beginning. So I noticed him, and he actually noticed me, and we didn't meet, I think, for another year.
In a sea of men, Tim actually noticed you.
Yeah.
Right. Crazy.
I know. It's like Wolverine's looking at her, I think, the one woman walking around Overland Expo, but I definitely noticed her. And I was shocked to find out. I think it was a year after we'd been dating that we had talked, and found out that it was actually the year before we met that both of us noticed the other one and started asking questions like, who is that?
Yeah. And then we met at Expo at like a vendor's party, and Tim said hi. And that was about all we said to each other. And then we started, I think, talking through Facebook maybe a month or two after that.
Yeah.
In just checking out your YouTube videos, kind of got on a deep dive on that. Tim, you readily admit to being an introvert.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, even though Kelsey's doing all the voiceovers and stuff, I think she's kind of the same way. And the way we met at this party that one of the vendors puts on every year consistently, I'd never gone to it because you're working all day, you're tired. Again, being an introvert, I'm like, let's go sit around a fire with 4 good friends and drink some beers and hang out. And so neither of us would even go to that. And I think
it was the first time both of us actually went to a party. We got dragged along and we're like, okay, just for a little while ago. And then
well, you did it. You got together, managed to figure that out. You've got the Land Cruiser, and you managed to get rid of everything and actually get the whole thing going. So tell me about the why. You know, I get it. You were doing it. You saw folks doing it, but you did it. Why?
Yeah, we've had someone say to us, this is something that people just talk about. They don't actually do. And I think that was one of the biggest impetuses for us to actually do it because, you know, we talked about doing a lot of stuff and we never actually did anything about it. And so it just felt like life was kind of happening to you. And so taking control of that and going like, I'm going to try for something. The scariest part is, you know, what if I fail at something that I'm really trying at, or what if I don't love this thing that I've idolized and dreamed of for so long? But I think for us, or at least for me, it was very important to kind of reach for those dreams and go for it.
Yeah. I think also a theme of sort of, since we had met, is pushing each other. You know, it's like, okay, what sport or activity or trip have you always wanted to do that you haven't? Or, you know, the whole idea of buying like the FJ40 that we bought with mice living in it. Like financially, that's too scary for me. You know, for me, like during the last economic downturn, I don't know if we're headed for another one or not yet, but the one around 2009 or whatever, I pretty much lost everything, was laid off 5 different times as companies went under. I was working for banks. So of course they were going under, but from that point forward was like, not full, I'm sure as bad as the Great Depression era savers, but I was like, you know, if I could get $1, I was like putting it in a mattress. I was so paranoid, you know, from that downturn and from being, you know, foreclosed and all that kind of stuff, and basically starting over from scratch. And so I think I was too conservative and too scared to do anything that was too wild. I loved camping. I loved going to Baja. That was all great. Mountain bikes, dirt bikes, all that. But anything bigger was like, nah, I couldn't do that. That's too risky. And since we met, it was kind of a theme that we'd be like, let's go do this. Let's go do that. Let's head to this place, or, you know. And so it just seemed like a natural progression that like, look, what if you did say to yourself the things that you're too scared to do normally, you just said, no, I'm just going to do it. You know, it seems crazy. It seems like too much. It seems like it's not going to work out. What if we just did those things until they don't work out? And then maybe we, you know, pump the brakes a little and be more safe or conservative. But so far we've just continued going for it. And I think because, you know, you have a partner in it, it's not nearly as scary. You just try something and go for it, and it works out. And even if it doesn't, at least there's 2 of you there to kind of figure out what to do next.
Yeah. So let's start with the beginning. When did you sell it all and load up the Land Cruiser and drive away? So
I think when we kind of decided it was a year out was 2017.
Yeah.
And then we decided, okay, our last paycheck would be next year's Overland Expo West. So let's work that. You know, we were in Phoenix, Arizona. It takes place in Flagstaff. So we figured that's a perfect time. And, you know, we'll leave right from the expo or whatever. So we just started selling, and, you know, Kelsey became an expert in searching Craigslist and finding deals on, you know, dirt bikes or whatever it was that we anything we had a good knowledge of that we thought we could buy, you know, get running better and flip. And then we were selling furniture, we had some old motorcycles and stuff, and we just fixed up everything we could and sold it. And then we left pretty close to our target. It was like 2 weeks later, I think, because we had nearly burnt the truck to the ground. So when we cut the roof off the truck, which was a little bit terrifying, we glued on this epoxy or whatever, this pop top on. We were welding closed some holes on the top, or my buddy actually was TIG welding. And from outside we heard, fire, fire. And it had caught the insulation on the pop top on fire, and the whole thing was burned to the ground. The temp material on the side was on fire. And
terrifying.
So I jumped in it.
Face. You can't see my face, but that feeling in my stomach of just like, oh, there it goes. Everything.
Yeah, I mean, it was completely that. It was, I think at this point we'd finally told a bunch of friends. So now it's like, you're going, right? It's official. And I don't know if I'd given notice or not, but I mean, it is happening, and we're going on this trip, and the thing is burning in front of me. And, sure, this is the one time the fire extinguisher is not close, or it's not, I don't think if it had a charge in it or something. So I'm just glad I had a baseball cap on, because when I jumped inside the truck to start, I just had a bucket of water and I was throwing it up onto the ceiling, trying to get it to stop. It's raining black, molten plastic on me. And so I got all these burns and stuff, but thankfully the baseball cap kept me from getting my face burned. And so that was the beginning of our trip. I mean, like what a dumpster fire. And yet, we just took like an hour to be a little crushed. And then we're like, okay, so here's what we need to do. We need to order this, we need to order that. Kelsey was learning how to sew better. We re-sewed in the tent, all the pieces that burnt, we re-insulated it. We, fixed everything we had to do, put seat covers over the sort of melted seats. And I think it was about a 2-week setback. And we went, okay, like we cannot let anything stop us.
Wow. Poco a poco, as they say in Mexico.
Yeah.
Wow. So you left 2017, drove out of Arizona, correct?
So 2017, we decided to go a year out. So we left 2018. What would it have been? June?
Probably end of May or early June.
Yeah. So we went and we basically camped in the mountains, outside San Diego, and crossed over into Tecate, and just, it was happening. It was crazy. The first night camping in the mountains, instead of going down to the beach right away, we decided to go up into the mountains and kind of run that. I'm not even sure what the mountains are called there. Actually, I can't even think of it, but kind of up where the Baja 500, 1000 course goes up in the pine trees there. We camped there because it was hot summer, and just kept making our way along that ridge. And it didn't set in, I don't think, for at least a week, that this wasn't like, when do we turn around and go home? When do we need to be back at work? And there was no date.
Wow. And that was getting into warm weather for that beginning part of the trip. It just got warmer from there, I'm assuming. Did you figure that in, or coming from Arizona, everything else is cooler, so it doesn't matter?
Almost that. I mean, and that's one of the reasons we stuck to the pine trees. So I just did all those pine trees. Then we hit Valley de Trinidad and went up to Mike's Sky Ranch. And then we did, Simpson Hill. And we just stayed high. And then the mountains just south of there, I probably can't remember off the top of my head because it's been a couple of years now. But you go up to the top and you're at 8,000 or 9,000 feet, and it was actually cold and it was wonderful. We had a mountain lion in camp at night. It was a little terrifying. We started camping with the tailgate and the hatch closed after that. But that was amazing. And then when we went down to the beach, of course, on the drive there, it got hot, and our goal was just don't leave the Pacific Ocean. So the whole way south, we didn't do any Sea Cortez side that time, just because it was so hot. And, but as you know, as long as you're right on the beach. And so we aired down the tires and just ran the beach for days at a time. And then when you, of course, had to go inland due to some cliffs or something, it'd be 110, and you just go, all right, back to the beach. Come on.
And so since we're talking slow Baja here, let's get into a little bit of the Pacific side. What did you see? What sticks with you? Now, you've driven all the way to the tip of Tierra del Fuego and back, and you're in Wyoming now. So those are a lot of miles since you started in Baja. But what did you see in Baja that stays with you?
For us, I think, I guess because I grew up going to Baja a bunch, I know the rules sort of, where you can get fuel, sort of the laws and everything, how everything works. So it's really comfortable. So for us, it's neat because it's that international destination where you're on the beach, but no one's coming up on the beach and telling you to leave, or as long as you know where you're at anyways, So for us, it was just those sections of beach with no one there, where you're looking at the Baja Atlas or at aerial, stuff if you have a decent cell signal, and you're just finding your way to beaches you've never had the time to get down to that take a day or two. So for us, I think just those desolate beaches where you don't even see tire tracks and you just hang out and go, well, this one's ours, and then you run into some locals and they're always so nice. And so that was just the theme of our whole Baja trip this time, was snorkeling and swimming around and just trying to find those beaches with nobody around. And when you did, you just hung out for a little while.
Yeah, I think there's such like a wildness to Baja, and I love the landscapes because I love the desert and I love the beach, and it kind of combines those two for me. And the people are so nice, the food is good. Like Tim said, it's a pretty easy country as far as international travel goes to travel through.
And by the way, we consider Baja its own country.
Yeah, totally.
Baja Sonora, maybe.
Like,
I don't know. Mainland Mexico is amazing too, but the beaches there, most beaches, there's a gate. Somebody wants some money. Not always. Sometimes you get down and it's free, but then there's a bunch of other surfers there and stuff, which is also fine, great. But we realized how special Baja is on this trip, because even South America, where you think it would be desolate, or you think, at least we did, that we'd find these long stretches of empty beaches. Usually there's a hut, a hut every couple of miles or something. There's people living all along the beaches. And sure, there are some remote ones, but in general, it's funny, we'd find ourselves in these beautiful exotic places and going, God, I wish we could just head over to Baja real quick, get some tacos and go to the beach. And so
people would ask us all on the trip, so you've seen so many places, what's your favorite? And it always came back to Baja for me, because even though it's so close to home, there's just something so special about Baja. And maybe it is because it feels easier or safer than a lot of the countries did, but I think it's just the wildness, and there's adventure to be had there, I think.
Well, I think it's the ability to get remote too for us. And so I know, I think people would sort of roll their eyes and go, oh, but you've been to Patagonia and you've been to the Bolivian jungle or whatever. And it's like, no, those are all amazing, every single one of them. But there is something about, you can't mistake distance from home for coolness, And so if we're honest, I really still feel like that's my favorite place, possibly on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say it's a desolation on our doorstep.
Yeah.
And especially if you get into some dirt there, you really don't see very many people.
No.
And you can get onto the dirt pretty quickly. I would imagine you were on dirt pretty soon after you crossed the border in Tecate. Probably found some tacos and then said, okay, time to get off the paved road here and get to where our truck feels comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah. And for us, our truck is somewhere, it's more comfortable than guys doing it on motorcycles, but it's a lot less comfortable than people doing it maybe in like an RV or a sliding camper. Mm-hmm. And so we found Baja played to the truck's strengths, where we added an auxiliary tank and a lot more water storage. So, for the trip in general, but in remote places like that, or like in Argentina, there's this Altiplano area that's kind of the high desert. And we found in these really remote areas of the trip, our truck was shining the most, because you can go, cool, we're good for at least one full week. Let's go as remote as we can. And the goal is just to be off the beaten path and have our own space in the world, so to speak. So Baja played to that really well. So that's what was so neat. And then of course, after that, you love coming into town and getting tacos and hanging out.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the modifications you made to your truck. We can geek out. I'm sure there's a few Land Cruiser aficionados listening here, just because I drive the old FJ40 down to Baja. But tell me what modifications you made to your truck before you left.
So we've had this truck for like 10 years. So I had it before we met, and I the main stuff, just the normal off-roading stuff, like front bumper, rear bumper with a couple of swing outs. I re-geared it, put some bigger tires on it, and then some really nice shocks. And that was about it. And, I'd sleep in a platform on the back. And frankly, we could have done the whole trip with it set up like that, mm-hmm. with the fridge underneath the bed, like we used to have it. But for the trip, I had my eye on one of these pop tops. A guy made 7 of them with one prototype. So really like 6 production ones. And I knew they'd all been sold, 5-6 years ago, and he had gone on with his life and had stopped making them. And so the chances of finding one were really small. And then I posted on some forums, and lo and behold, a guy shoots me a message in Canmore, Canada, near Banff, and says, I've got one, my truck's all rusted out, but the top's aluminum. So, but I'm going to get a new 80 series and I don't need the pop top because I'm not going to be traveling in it anymore. So if you want to buy it, come on up and get it. So he had changed his mind a couple of times. And then with the final time when he said, okay, I'm definitely going to sell it. I said, okay, I'm on my way. What? And so we did a, was it 30-hour,
Oh, it was
28-hour
miserable, yeah.
drive, and we had to do it over weekend. We still had jobs. So
And it was in January, I think.
yeah, so January, we get in the truck, and 80 series people know this little firewall. There's a little bushing in the firewall that keeps the steering from having too much slop in it, and that had blown out on mine. So you've got kind of a wonky, I think my FJ40 has better steering than this had on this drive anyways. And so we headed up to Canada in January, and we had to get it all done on a 3-day weekend. So we drove up there straight, got a hotel somewhere near the border, woke up at, we slept for 3 hours, then woke up, kept driving. Couldn't get the truck to even stay warm enough to run properly. So we were trying to block off the radiator like the semis do up there. I mean, we had every bit of clothing on. We're so Arizona, Southern California
totally
people
for how completely and amazingly cold it could be up there.
Yeah. We're in the truck wearing everything we have, and we go, so that means if the truck breaks down, we die. So we got to this guy's garage and pulled it inside, turned on one of those little jet sort of heaters, and started cutting, got a jigsaw out and cut the roof off my truck, threw it in his side yard, and started gluing the new top on. And, something like 18 or 19 hours of straight work and lots of coffee. And we were leaving, and, we didn't even have time to go get a coffee with the guy or say, we said thanks, obviously, immensely, but, we had just cut the top off the truck. And then you look at the tube of Sikaflex, which is the epoxy we used, and a lot of these folks used. And it's 6 days to properly cure at above 70 degrees. We're just well, we got a ratchet strap. So if the top flies off as we're going south, we'll have a convertible, and then we'll just ratchet strap it on. This is totally fine. And it worked out. But I mean, that drive up and back were more dangerous than most of the trip, I think, through the Americas over the years, because it was just too crazy. Too many hours, not enough sleep, too many miles to get done. And then we arrived at, I think, at 4 or 5 a.m. on the work day. And so I just parked the truck, got in maybe the 40, or I think we had a Prius at the time, and went to work. And then I didn't get anything done those next couple of days at work, but I was there and they had no idea what we'd been up to. So.
Wow. Now, I've driven a lot. I've done a lot of dumb all night drive kind of things. Wow. Never involving,
I wouldn't recommend it.
Fabricating against the clock and freezing temperatures, but wow. So Kelsey, you've sounds like you roll with it pretty well.
Yeah, a lot of times I'm the impetus of
She's the instigator,
we should do this. So I'd say I'm just as much part of wanting to do all this stuff.
Yep, absolutely. I'm not pushing on a lot of this stuff. I'll be like, it'd be nice if we had a pop top. And I start showing her some photos, and she's like, if we can get our hands on that, we should do that. So it's like, okay, well, here we go. So besides the top, we built an interior. He had an interior that was in his truck he gave us. And so we took that and modified it. So we have a bench on one side, a countertop on the other, sort of a kitchen at the back. I built a little fold down table off the swing out. And then we got a much bigger propane tank. So we have a 10 pound or 11 pound, I think it is, that lasts for a couple of months. And so we just sort of turned the truck from more of that weekend lightweight, I'm going to go to Baja for 4 or 5 days type truck, into something that we could stay in for, now a couple of years. And so, we'll get Airbnb on the trip if we're in a city, or we'll pay for a campground, once a month or something to get showers. But in general, the goal is to not pay for camping and to just live in the truck. So it's, for the living in it, it is tight and it is small, I think, for full time. But for what we're doing with that mix of occasionally getting Airbnbs or whatever, it hasn't been bad. There's been times where it's felt really small and tight.
Yeah, I think its downfall is camping in a city is hard because, we don't have a proper bathroom. We can't really take a shower unless you're outside.
Yeah. And we can't even sleep without popping the top of the truck, really. You can try and fit yourself down below, but that's where, the folks, our friends we've traveled with in a Sprinter van or whatever, a Sprinter van or all these other different options where you sleep inside. They just pull into a town and park, and who knows if they're actually in there or not,
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, getting back to the conversation we had before I started recording about the Volkswagen Westphalia, you can sleep down below, or you can sleep with the top popped up. If you have the top popped up, it tells everybody that you're, in there sleeping.
Yep.
Whether that's the local park ranger or, others. But what you're just telling me then is you really don't have a comfortable spot to sleep down below, because that's full of gear or what have you.
Yep. And so it's tough because the way the truck was before, it was obviously only below because there was no up area. I'm not a big fan of rooftop tents. I had one when sort of people first started importing them to the US, and had it for a month and went, man, in wind, this is horrible. You put it away wet, you know, it's too much top heavy. So I didn't want to go that way. And that's why I always slept inside. But I do think when we built the interior, we should have made a very easy to figure out lower bed, because the winds of Patagonia, I mean, there was a week in a row where it was so strong that it would have ripped the top clean off if we had popped the top. And then, you know, there was a motorcyclist, I think an American motorcyclist, that passed away by being blown just clean off the highway. So it's serious wind like we'd never dealt with. And those situations, to have the option to sleep below, or just to stealth camp, like you're saying, to go, you know, I'm just in the parking lot at the Grand Canyon. Like I've done that before, where, you know, you're passing through, there's no actual campsite. So you just park in the parking lot, put in the sunshades, laying back, no one knows. That's a nice option to have.
Yeah, there's a couple nights where you just tuck in a Walmart parking lot driving cross country, and you say, you know what, it's not the worst thing ever. There's a bathroom inside, and
yep.
You know, I want to get into your fears, because, you know, again, most people would be paralyzed by fear and not even be able to begin this. And as you've said quite clearly, if you two can do it, anybody can do it. Now you've got some fabrication skills, you've taught some, you know, off-roading, overland recovery kind of stuff. So you've built up some skills along the way. Tell me about getting past your fears, and have any of your fears been worst case scenarios been realized, and how'd you get past them if they have?
Yeah, I think the biggest fear and most general fear is probably just the fear of the unknown. You know, doing something like this, you're trying to set up a truck for something you've never done. You don't know, what do I need? I mean, I was overwhelmed by setting up a kitchen, you know, like, well, what should I bring in a kitchen? I'm going to be living in this truck. You know, usually I'm camping for 2 weeks at the most. And so everything becomes this like, oh my gosh, it's all overwhelming. But I think as we jumped into it, we were just able to take bite-sized pieces, you know, okay, this time we're putting on this pop top. This is what we're doing. And you know, so many things we would YouTube to figure out how to do it. So I think we're comfortable with kind of learning on the fly. I mean, everything we've done, I feel like in the last 3 years, editing videos, like, okay, I'm going to Google how, you know, look on YouTube. How do I do this? How do I do that? And so a lot of learning, but yeah, the fear, it's a huge part of everything traveling, I think, you know, and dealing with it. Luckily we have each other, and we've learned that, you know, if you're afraid of something, to talk about it, because it will come out in other ways, anger,
frustrations stuff,
and so I think just learning to deal with it right in the moment is really helpful.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot better at that. I mean, you know, you'll see we'll both pass a police officer on the side of the road, which, you know, in all these other countries, it's not reassuring. It's okay, are they going to try and shake us down? Which only happened, I think 3 or 4 times, but it's still a huge, huge anxiety that when you see a police car and it pulls out behind you. And so, you know, that can turn into both of us sort of getting on each other's nerves and snapping at each other. And so instead, it's just so much, we've learned to kind of just, all of our fears, just say them out loud, you know, and go, man, I'm freaking out a little bit right now. That guy's following us, man. What is he going to do? If he's going to be the aggressive, I want money, or the kind of, come on, hook me up. You know, we've had both. And of course, one's not a big deal, and the other, it had gotten more interesting a couple of times. And so we just, I think dealing with the fear as we go, but I do think the main fear is the fear of just going. And we're always telling people, just go. And we get emails about, okay, here's my truck, I've planned it out. People putting well over $100,000 into their truck, and you just go, don't do it. You know, unless you've just got that to burn, by all means, go for it. But people get into analysis paralysis and they'll never leave. And we've met people one guy, Miguel, actually, we call him, he's from Australia. He was backpacking, and then a guy in Baja gave him a free pickup truck, an old Ford Ranger 2-wheel drive, you know, stock basically, with a shell on the back that leaked. And we kept running into him the whole trip. And we hung out with him in Patagonia. He did it in a free truck with no supplies, nothing. He just did it. No mechanical knowledge, nothing. I mean, he just figured it out. It's like every time it broke, he would just talk to a mechanic, and he rewired the alternator like 4 times or something. But it ended up working, and he did the whole trip cheaper than almost anybody I've met. And then on the other side, we met people in $200,000, you know, beautiful German Unimog rigs, and their number one cost is food, because they're eating out every night and going to the nicest restaurant. So you can spend easily $100,000 a year, or you can spend, $6,000 and do the whole trip. And so I think all those fears, you just have to realize that they're going to keep you from doing the trip, and you have to go. We never had, every time we had an ominous sort of, some guys are walking up to our truck and it's nighttime, it was always okay. It was always, hey guys, we're the local community security and we're a little freaked out. Who are you? What are you doing here? And you're like, you're freaked out by us? Oh, okay. Well, we're from the United States. We're doing this, we're doing that. And they're smiling and they're like, oh, you scared us. There's reports that there was a truck in the mountains and we're the kind of, local security guys. And so, yeah, we were terrified, and you realize they were more scared of us. Right. So it's always worked out in that situation. We've had so many people come up to us and approach us, and it's never been a negative thing ever.
Yeah. So kindness of strangers. I was watching one of your videos, and you're driving down a dirt road and a family passes you on their quad. So let's get to that. A family, mom, dad, a couple of kids,
Yes.
all piled on a quad, which you see in a lot of, other countries, people all piled on. And, you talk to them and you want to know where to camp, and they invite you up to their ranch.
Yeah.
And I think that's so unexpected.
It is. I mean, it recalibrates. Years ago we did, before this trip, one of our first trips together out of the country besides Baja was to Cuba, and like walking down the streets, sort of rubble, looks like, war zone in some ways, falling apart. And by the time we left, we realized we'd recalibrated sort of what was scary, because this is a nice street we're staying on. When we first showed up, we went, what have we done? We picked a bad place to stay.
Should we even be here?
Yeah. Should we even be on this street? Like, and just 4 days later, you're like, man, our street's beautiful. This is great. And they're doing the best they can with what they've got. And you've reset what is scary and what's not. So for us, we're always resetting, every time we got to a border, every single border, we had some anxiety. What's the new country going to be like? Are all the rumors true? You're sitting at the border of El Salvador or Nicaragua, and in the news at the time, things were not going well in some of these countries, and you're terrified. And then you just go ahead and go for it, talk about it with each other to keep the fear from being too much. And then every time it turned into one of our favorite places, and we were just so comfortable there. And every time you just had a question, you went, let's just stop on the side of the road and ask that person or that person. And people were so overly nice. It was sort of shaking, and you went, okay, I got to remember, don't trust. I mean, there's a deep gut, I think, that you do trust, in like, let's get out of here. This is something's going on in this town, or, there's a big festival going on. Everyone's really drunk and a couple of guys are fighting. It's time to leave, So you do trust your gut, but in a lot of ways, there's this other voice that is the paranoid voice, sort of that American that's used to everything looking a certain way and being sort of orderly. Ignore that voice. You got to let that one go. And we were always, and we still are. I'm sure if we crossed a border tomorrow, we'd have a little anxiety and we'd be thinking, just relax and, give it a chance.
Do you find that each country is afraid of their neighbor in some way? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
are the Canadians afraid of us, or we're afraid of the Mexicans are afraid of the, folks from El Salvador, and it just works its way south. The Venezuelans don't like the Colombians, or vice versa. And then, whatever.
Completely. I completely agree. Even within one country, where are you guys headed? Oh, over there. Don't go over there. They're all thieves over there. And you get to the next town and there's not a person not smiling and waving at you as you drive by.
And they'll tell you bad things about the town that you
where'd
just
you come
came
from?
from.
Oh, how did you not get
nice.
robbed over there? They're all scoundrels over there. And you're like, I got it. And so once you realize that, you don't want to discount people's warnings, but we got used to those type of warnings where you go, got it. Those people, that really nice lady saying, don't go over there, reminded me of the people in the US saying you'll die in Baja. And I knew that one wasn't true because we'd spent so much time. So we knew right off the bat to discount those warnings, but then you started to believe the locals ones because they're locals. Now there's different kinds of warnings too. Like if people go, yeah, don't go to those mountains, it's harvest season. You go, got it. Not going to go up in that area right now.
Don't drive at night. Okay. Got it.
Yep. Very specific, and then all Mexico mainland, don't drive at night. We had a couple of friends drive at night, and it ended up being like, again, the town security folks, but they got hassled and yelled at and pulled out of their car because the security people were like, you must be running drugs. There's an agreement. You don't drive in this state of Mexico at night. What are you doing? And so we knew not to do that. The moment we hit Guatemala, I asked a local we had become friends with, and who was showing us cenotes and cliff jumps and all this amazing stuff. I said, can you drive at night here? And he's like, oh, your headlights not work? And I was like, no, I mean, is it safe to drive at night here? Is it okay? And he's like, well, it's more dangerous because it's dark. And I was like, okay, got it. There's no issues here with driving at night. And so you just ask around and kind of go, what's the etiquette? What do I do? What don't I do? And for the most part, there isn't any big rules, I don't think, that we learned.
Yeah, it kind of brings back that little kid brain of like, you have to figure things out and learn by seeing or asking, or, you know, because you're not just going to automatically know all this stuff. So it's kind of interesting that way to travel.
Yeah, you hit a mountain town, and instead of the last town where everyone was smiling and waving and talking to you, asking where you're from, saying, do you like their country? Do you like this? You know, you get to another town and everyone's looking at the ground. Everyone looks pretty downtrodden and scared of you, scared of each other. And you go, something's happened here. Doesn't mean that you're in danger, but you notice things that you wouldn't normally notice.
Here at Slow Baja, we can't wait to drive our old Land Cruiser south of the border. And when we go, we'll be going with Baja Bound Insurance. Their website's fast and easy to use. Check them out at bajabound.com. That's bajabound.com, serving Mexico travelers since 1994. Hey, Baja tourism is picking up, and our friends at the Animal Pad and Tap Act want to remind you when you're crossing the border, just say no to puppy peddlers. I know they're cute, but the sooner we can end the demand, we can end the supply. For more information, check out theanimalpad.org and Tap Act on Instagram and Facebook.
I want to jump back to something that we kind of missed. We talked about when you departed, but I don't think you've recapped your journey yet. Can you do that for me? Just talk about where you crossed. You said Tecate, and then how long in Baja, and where did it go from there? I've seen the map, but you know, the Slow Baja listeners haven't yet.
Yeah, so we crossed in Tecate, and that's where we used to cross when we go down to race, and usually be heading to Ensenada, of course. And I just knew how busy it was, and it wasn't, you know, our lives had been really fast, especially trying to prepare for the trip. Besides, they're already normally fast in just American life, but so we just wanted to get away. So we stayed, and I wish I had a map in front of me to remember all the names of the mountains, but we stayed in the mountains of south of Tecate and just weaved our way south. And then I can't remember it's named after like a person or something, but we went up this really tall mountain, sort of just to the east of San Quintin area there. And we just stayed as high as we could until we knew we were getting to the beaches that were more remote and less people. And so I think it's Rosario or something like that. We then stuck to the beach heading south and left Highway 1. And I think in total in Baja, we spent a month.
About a month, yeah.
And looking back, we easily would have been happy spending 3 months there or something. But I think knowing how much was ahead of us, it was like, this is here. This is always going to be here near where we live. I love Baja, but I'm excited to see mainland Mexico. I'm excited to see the mountains. I'm excited to see Guatemala. So I think we didn't feel rushed, but we would have, doing it again, we would have slowed down, and every beach camp that was amazing, we would have doubled our time there.
Yeah, easy.
Hey, so I want to catch you because we haven't even, again, gotten out of Baja yet. There's a lot of your trip to discuss, but we're 40 minutes in, and I picked up something that I think Kelsey said in one of your videos about slowing down. Has that been a problem for the two of you to just slow down, relax, chill where you are, be where you are when you're there?
Yeah, for sure. That was, it still is a struggle for us. Like Tim said, especially coming off of like this year of preparing and working really hard to make all of this happen. It was hard to slow down. And then I think for us, feeling like, we had been to Baja a few times, and it still felt like vacation, where you're like, okay, we have 2 weeks. We need to see all of this. We need to spend 2 days here, and then we're moving on. And so that was hard to break that habit of like, we don't have an end date. Like, we don't have to be anywhere at any particular time. And I think part of it, like he said too, was the excitement of like, ooh, what's next? What's coming up next? And so learning to enjoy where you're at and go, this is a really good spot. The next spot might also be really good, but like, let's enjoy this really good spot. Mm-hmm. It's a struggle, and something that we both kind of try to hold each other accountable to be like, this is a good spot. We should maybe stay here. How do you feel about staying here? And trying to just slow each other down a bit.
Yeah, I think for sure these 5-6 day trips we always used to do were always about doing the most, seeing the most, and rushing for some reason. And so we now are immensely slower travelers than we used to be. And it's funny, we get on the highways here in the US and I feel like, gosh, everyone's in such a rush, but I was absolutely one of those people. I was probably even more in a rush than your average person. So we've slowed down immensely, but we still want to even slow down more. But it's a hard thing for us. You know, we'll meet some travelers who get to a beach, maybe they're from another country or something. And so they haven't sort of had that same American go, go, go as part of their psyche. And they'll just post up and, you know, we'll go off and we'll see 10 different things and we'll circle back to the town. And they're still sitting there on the same patio as they were when we left, you know, drinking cheap wine in Mendoza. And you're going, that looks pretty good too. We'll do that. And then we'll hang out with them for a week in one little town and go, we didn't move, you know, we just hung out and got to know one town, but that was really hard for us. So it's something we always have to remember to keep in mind, I think.
All right. So let's fast forward then. You're in Baja. You spent how long in Baja?
About a month, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any highlights you want to discuss? Which beaches, which places?
I mean, I think our favorites, we couldn't find any names to them. And so it's kind of what we would do is just avoid, you know, when the big cities were on the, you know, at least at the south, it was kind of, we could go to either side. It was all hot down there. We would just kind of go to whatever side had the smaller towns or less paved roads. But I think Cabo Polmo was beautiful down there. That was amazing.
Really?
And there was a nice little, you know, sort of, I guess you'd call it a 4x4 road, not super hard, but it deterred 90% of people from taking it around the point down there.
Yep.
And that was just great. It
Really,
was
really hot though.
weltering hot, but the fish and everything you saw is exactly what you hoped it would be, which was really cool. But I think for me, that section sort of south of El Rosario down to, gosh, even all the way down to Scorpion Bay or Ignacio, right?
Yeah.
That whole area there, we were just trying to stick just to the beach, and it was pretty doable.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And you know, we would air down the tires and find a really loose sand path down to the beach, and then stay for a couple of days and just not see anybody. And other times we'd get to know like some fishermen who come out each morning at a different beach. And it's just, those were kind of my favorites, that simple, to me, perfection.
Yeah.
There's nothing extraordinary about any of these beaches except that they were yours. And that's our favorite thing.
Yeah. I think for me, like the San Ignacio, Scorpion Bay was where, at least the time of year we were at, the water had just, it was like a turning point. Like the camp north of that was a little cold. And then you got there and it was like, oh, the water's like, you could stay in the water and swim and it's beautiful. And like the beaches are, you know, pretty empty because it takes, you know, surfers that know that area to actually come there. Yeah. So the beaches were pretty awesome and the waves were awesome and the water was nice. And that was just like prime right there. That
was a special day, like a 30-mile drive down the coast along the beach. And it went from yesterday's jump in the water was a little bit cold still, you know, San Diego kind of temperature feeling. I'm sure it was warmer, but still felt cold. And then the next day we're going, has this changed? Yeah, I think this has changed. This is nice. So that was a nice shift.
Yeah.
All right. And now put it in 4 high and let's just fast forward a little bit through the other parts of the trip and let everybody know where you've been and how it's gone.
So we went to mainland Mexico, which was...
Did you cross in from the ferry in La Paz?
No, that's a long story, but...
That's in our mistakes video.
Yeah.
So we
meant to.
Yeah, we meant to. So we had like got our passport stamped, but we didn't do the importation paperwork because going to Baja, I've never done it. And I was like, we'll get it down in La Paz. And so we were in La Paz and they would not give it to us. And they said, you have to go back to the border to get it. So we actually...
FMM?
Yep, exactly. It's like $150 that you put into a bank, you know, the Mexican like federal bank, and you get it back later. But we didn't do that step. And so they said, well, most people, when they screw this up, fly back to San Diego, walk across the border and get it. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So we did a crazy 1.5 day drive from the tip of Baja all the way up on one, cut across by Coco's Corner and around San Felipe. And then I think, you know, we went to Mexicali to 2 different border crossings to get the paperwork done. And they had some trouble with, you know, with being okay with us clearly being in the country for a while, but now wanting the import permit and all that. So we were just going to cross back into the US and cross back over. In the end, an older guy at the office said, no, this is no big deal. Here you go. And we were all good to go, and then headed to sort of El Golfo area and camped. And
Yeah.
then we kept coming around the corner there. And then we wanted to go up into Copper Canyon. We had a friend, actually, the mountain bike shop I go to in Phoenix. He's from a little town up in the mountains of, is that Guerrero? I can't remember now.
Something, yeah. I can't.
But so he was going to be visiting his town. So we went there and got to do like a mountain bike race, and then like got to hang out. They had some big festival going on. So we kind of stuck to the mountains heading south, and then we hit the beach again in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
We're not fast forwarding enough, though,
No,
I'm sure.
but-
So we really enjoyed all of Mexico.
The food was amazing.
Food's
That was
amazing.
the highlight, I think.
For sure, seeing it change.
You came north and on the east coast of the Baja Peninsula, past San Felipe, back up to Mexicali, and then you drove around the top of the Gulf of California and back down the east side, the mainland side of the Gulf, and then continued south, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And then we started zigging and zagging.
My mind here.
Yeah, we'd go inland. You know, there were some things we wanted to see here and there. So we would stick to the coast and then shoot way inland, come back over. You know, it was a trip to really see from the stereotypical Mexico that I know growing up in Southern California, you just picture it as being sort of desert Baja-like, to being up at higher elevations than we've ever been on volcanoes, and then going to Mexico City and seeing this massive city that had some of the nicest and the worst areas we'd seen of the trip. It was mind blowing. So getting into southern Mexico, places we'd never been before, and being on the beaches there, meeting other travelers, meeting a guy from Dana Point, you know, which is where I grew up, and a guy down there surfing, and was down for 3 days surfing his tail off. And then you just realize that you're the one that he's envious of. You realize you're the one on the trip, and it kind of, there's moments like that hit you and go, wait, I'm the one doing the thing I would normally be like, oh, I got to do that someday.
Yeah.
So was that
right.
the beaches in Huatulco or in Oaxaca? Where were you meeting
Yes.
for Dana Point?
Yep, Oaxaca. And I think it was San Francisco Beach, I think
Yeah.
is what it was. And yeah, it was amazing. And, you know, then we went into San Cristobal, was a really cool little hipster town. And, you know, for I think $21 or something like that, this beautiful architect, this beautiful house that an famous architect or a wealthy architect in Mexico City had built, and he was renting out casitas on his villa, you know, to Airbnb so cheaply. We had our own fireplace and like view of the mountains, and we stayed in this little town of San Cristobal and just walked everywhere each day. And it's the perfect opposite of being in the truck and going, okay, we haven't had a shower in a month. We've done our laundry literally in the ocean, in the salt water, and like haggard, you know. Then you get into this town and you're like, let's put more wood on the fire and hang out on the king size bed and enjoy a shower. And so those sort of vast contrasts, I think, were one of our favorite things of the trip, to be super remote and then to be full city life, you know, going out and like, you know what, I know I'm in Guatemala, but I want a hamburger. What's the best hamburger in town? You know, we've eaten local for enough weeks. Let's try, you know, feeling like we're at home. So those contrasts was what made the trip pretty cool.
So San Cristobal has been calling to me for 20 years. We took a little family trip when my kids were very young, and went to Baja, and it didn't really work out. It was too hot for us. So we put the minivan on the ferry and went over to the mainland and drove across from Mazatlan over the Devil's Backbone into Durango and then on to Zacatecas. But on the ferry, we met an American, a guy from a screenwriter from LA, and it's just stuck with me. He was going to San Cristobal, which, you know, I really wasn't on my radar. And he was talking about, yeah, you know, I think I can live on 150, 200 a month. It's just really cheap. It's really beautiful. And it just stuck with me. And I've gotten to Tuxtla Gutierrez a couple of times, but never gotten to San Cristobal, which is only another 100 miles down the road.
Oh, so close.
So close. Yeah, exactly. So cross over into Central America and take me all the way down. How did you get to South America? What was your method of, that's always the problem. Where do you ship your vehicle there? And let's jump into it, foot on the floor now.
You know, all of Central we loved. It at times it was super hot, and I think the sort of highlights for most Americans of Costa Rica and Panama, we loved them, but those were our least favorite, I would say, because they're so Americanized. The prices were not far from being the US, and so for us, we also recognize that who you meet determines what you think of a country. So in Guatemala, one buddy who used to lead tours up into the Petén near Tikal and kind of out in the more remote jungle up there introduced me to one of the guides he used to use. And that guy became a good friend. And then he introduces us to Jose, and Jose's got a a $2 million house in Antigua. And so we're crashing in his guest room. I mean, it was just mind blowing. The whole trip was changed because we met these people that kept introducing us to other people and giving us GPS tracks to follow deep into the jungle. And we did all that remote jungle stuff we'd kind of wanted to do, seeing ruins that, almost no one had seen that are still covered up, seeing ones that had been, you had a hole bored into the side of them. They just look like a dirt mountain that, I guess you call it grave robbers had gone into and stolen everything out of. I mean, it's super neat. So that made Guatemala for us. Then El Salvador was great, and you're kind of, on your consciousness is MS-13 running the country, or, if you see a guy with face tattoos, don't talk to him. And never saw anyone that even had really any tattoos. And the place was great. And we sat on the beach eating pupusas, and it was wonderful. And then we headed into Nicaragua, and there a friend introduced us to someone who has a cigar factory. So we went and toured that. Amazing. And then Costa Rica and Panama were both amazing too, but they were more restrictive. You go to the beaches and there's a couple hundred gringos from whatever country surfing, and it was awesome to interact and hang out, but you felt like you had gone from another world into more of like a tourist world. And so it was great, but just so different that we kind of longed for.
And I think we were also on a bit of a schedule at this, not a tight schedule, but we had a shipping date. So to ship around the Darien Gap, we put Goose on like in a cargo container.
Yeah, in Colombia.
And so we had that date that we needed to, be at the port to put them in.
Yep.
And so we would have spent more time, I think, in those countries if we had more time, because they were great. And then once we got to Panama, it was mostly business and
inspections for your truck, going to see the police. They have to check everything. So it's a big, long, drawn out process to get vehicle shipped. So, the vehicle shipping from Colón to Cartagena, which is very few miles, cost more than shipping from Uruguay back to Texas at the end of the trip, and which is, 20 times further. So pretty wild, but what's that beeping?
So take me through South America.
South America was great. In Colombia, we waited for our truck for, it's Christmas time, and the truck was supposed to arrive. The Dakar rally's going on south of us, and I've been dying to get to see that. And the ship's just stuck at sea, some paperwork issue, not with having anything to do with us, but just, some bureaucratic issue. So we waited weeks in Cartagena waiting on the truck. Once we got it, it's too late to see Dakar, so we headed north to the northern tip of Colombia, and then just started working our way south. We met sort of more indigenous peoples up in the mountains there, and people who just invited us into their homes, or to camp on their sort of property, not really into their homes. But it was amazing, and loved Colombia. Felt totally safe. Loved the food. You're meeting Venezuelans everywhere, because we couldn't go into Venezuela, and right now is probably not the greatest time to go anyways, but they're migrating to all these other countries. So you're eating tons of Venezuelan food, meeting a ton of Venezuelans on the road, which we fell in love with their food, and it was awesome. Ecuador was great. Hang
on for a second there, Tim. So
sorry.
you only hear bad news about like Cartagena, the drug culture, the cocaine culture. They're going to come and get you, but that is like one of the greatest travel cities right now, and you got to spend a couple weeks there just because your truck was late.
Yeah. Cartagena, besides maybe in the super touristy area, we're looking out for like a pickpocket or something, it felt very safe, very fancy, in fact. And
there were areas that we walked everywhere trying to save money, and you'd walk through some areas where you're like, oh, maybe it would have been better to get a taxi or take the bus or something, but for the most part, it was pretty nice. Yeah.
Our research for each country was like watching bad old 80s movies. So we watched Romancing the Stone. So I knew Cartagena was going to be awesome.
Awesome. So you didn't do it by watching Anthony Bourdain videos and just saying, where we're going to eat?
Oh, we definitely
did. We watched all Anthony Bourdain on any country. In fact, we got used to now looking up the country on Netflix and Amazon and all these other ones to find out what food shows were done in it. And then if we were in a town where there was one, in Buenos Aires, we went to a New Orleans fried chicken place in Buenos Aires, because we're like, I saw it on the show. See how it is.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, so foot on the floor now. So we're heading down through South America. Give me some highlights.
Yeah, so I mean, Peru was amazing. Some of the shelf roads, we were able to get super remote there and loved it. You know, Machu Picchu was good, but it is Disneyland. You know, it's tens of thousands of people. The you're sort of ashamed to be an American at times there because people are grumpy and yelling at each other and the tour staff, and you go, let's get out of here. This is cool. It's something I want to see my whole life, but not really a highlight. Then we went into Brazil, down into Bolivia, and you just get tired of that hot jungle. But Bolivia was one of those places that was different than any other country. It is stuck in time, economically, otherwise. But the geographic craziness, you know, we did the Bolivian death road and the jungles in the north where there's so many caiman alligators everywhere that you'd not get near any water without being very scared. And then down in the south on the Lagunas route and the big salt flats, we drove our truck to 18,660 feet. I mean, we could have gotten to 19. If I had another truck with me, we probably would have gone past a washout to get to the top of this mountain. But just mind-blowing changes to be freezing cold up on a mountain and then 2 days later be back north in Bolivia in the jungle, sweating, and it's 100 degrees, 100% humidity, and brutal.
I think for me, wild. Bolivia was the country that felt the most third world, and we talked about fear earlier, but I think that one triggered the most fear, probably. Really, really pretty, but for some reason, wherever I was at, just mentally, it was my least favorite, I think, as far as
I think Bolivia is where we first started dealing with more protests. We saw some in Peru, but, you know, pulling up to a couple hundred people yelling and tires on fire and just going, am I going to be the target of some of their frustrations or not? And they were always nice. People were like, you guys have enough food? We can't let you through, but, you know, we'll make sure you have enough food and water while you wait, and it'll be a couple days. But it was a bit of a shock after traveling pretty free most of the trip to get used to that. From there, you know, we had to go to Iguazu Falls and all that. And then on our minds was sort of Patagonia and all those areas. And so we headed south and zigzagging again, not really efficiently doing one side or the other, kind of going where we felt like, or where maybe we heard one of our friends, because you're meeting people on a trip like this and you go, hey, so-and-so who we met in Panama is down here, and so-and-so who we just met over in Brazil is in the next town. So you're kind of using those as excuses to head directions.
Yeah.
Did your backgrounds being with Overland Journal and teaching at Overland Expo, did those connections come into play? Did people, you know, do you have some off-roading, overlanding celebrity, so to speak, that, you know, you were able to trade on and have friends that are hooking you up, so to speak?
No, I mean, I think because we knew some people who had traveled, we had people saying, like, I shared a Google map on my Facebook page long before we left saying, hey, what are your highlights? And so we had maybe more people than the average person putting pins on it. And in the end, we just found it wasn't even worth hunting for these pins. We liked, you know, you want to sort of find the view yourself. You want to find the beach in Baja yourself, and then it means more to you. So we maybe had more suggestions, but no, not really. You know, throughout the trip, we decided to do these YouTube videos each week. So I would say of each week, you know, combined between the shooting and the editing, we were working in front of a computer almost full-time hours. So our trip was definitely different than a lot of the people we met who were like sort of in a gap year in college or just graduated and were like, or retired and had all the money they needed. And we're like, this is pure fun. I'm just doing this for fun. Ours was awesome and fun, but to make this last, hopefully we were trying to work as much as we could. And whether we were doing consulting work for people back home, whether we were teaching some other travelers we met along the way, or a tour group, you know, we were able to teach his guides, you know, how better skills for winching and off-roading and all that sort of stuff.
We had kind of viewed it not just as a trip, like a lot of people are, but more as a life change, you know, like we want to live our lives differently, and this is a step towards that.
Yeah. So we skipped stuff that I would say, you know, if we could have done it again, would we have gone to the Galapagos and maybe Easter Island? Yeah, but that was 6 months or almost a year's worth of budget to go and do these side trips. Right. So there's stuff we didn't do that maybe we would have, but we were really trying to get ourselves to almost break even with the work that we were doing as we're traveling. So it was fantastic. We did get recognized one time. We were the southern part of the trip and we were climbing Fitzroy, Mount Fitzroy. And a couple from South Korea goes, Tim, Kelsey? And I went, like, no way, what? So yeah, that was our total celebrity for the whole trip was this really nice couple that we ended up actually shipping with them back to Texas in a container.
And you
right
didn't
as the
have to big
pandemic.
league anybody. You didn't have to say, hey, really, I'm doing my thing right now. I can't give you an autograph.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, I'm too busy. Excuse me.
So you shipped the truck back and you flew home. When about? Give me the timeline on that.
Yeah, so we're at the tip of the world down there in Ushuaia and stuff, and we hadn't heard anything about the pandemic yet. We're coming up through Chile and doing the Carretera Austral and all these sort of checkmark things we were dying to go do. And we were already over in sort of Mendoza area. I think we started hearing about, COVID. This is probably January or something like that. Then February, we're hearing more about it. It seems to be getting more serious. Down in these countries at the time, there was almost 0 cases. So it wasn't a concern there and travel wasn't limited. Then we're in Uruguay and it's seeming like it's getting more serious. So we decide, along with this other couple we met from South Korea, to ship our trucks to Texas. And so we started that process. And then as we're doing the process, it's getting more serious. State Department sending out emails saying, get home now if you're an American. So we actually, really only cut the trip short. I mean, in one sense, we may have decided to go up through Brazil more and go up into like Guyana or something like that. But we were kind of deciding one way or the other. It was about time to come home and work and save up some more anyways. So the pandemic really maybe pushed our trip short by 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, we had flights and we just pushed them up about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Once
So
we heard
flew
that,
in,
like,
was it
we
March?
need to get out. Yeah, I think we flew in like March 16th or 17th.
Everyone's telling us through email, like, if there's toilet paper down there, bring it home, fill your bags. We're going, what is going on? So we flew into Miami and, we had to fly from Buenos Aires. We flew to
Sao Paulo
to Miami to Los Angeles. No one ever asked us anything or checked us. No one was really even wearing masks at this point yet, except for, I think, TSA was.
Yeah.
And we got into LA and got to my parents' house in San Clemente and just hunkered down. And we went into, like Ralph's and we're just in awe of the food. Everyone was saying how the stores were barren, and compared to what we'd seen on the trip, it was like a culture shock to come home and see a pyramid of perfect Roma tomatoes, 4 feet high. And we're just going,
we'll be fine.
It's so amazing. None of them are moldy. And like, there's more than 5 of them, So it was
shocking, isn't it? Once you've done a little traveling.
Absolutely. And so we felt like everything was so plentiful that it was a luxury to be home. And compared to our friends who got stuck, we have some friends in Honduras. They're still there. We have another friend in Syria who's stuck there. So, I mean, when this happened, we got home and our life was pretty okay, pretty great. Compared to our friends who were locked down in a country, not able to enjoy the country or explore it. We had another friend who's a quadriplegic who was doing travel in a van, and he was stuck in Buenos Aires and he couldn't leave his Airbnb. And like, his brother would go get food and bring it back, and they were stuck for 6 months or something when they were supposed to be on this magical trip, sitting in an Airbnb. Our other friends were in a field in Honduras, and the government officials would bring them food, and they're still stuck now they're in a hotel, I think. But
so we
when you
super
think
lucked
about
out with
how it
timing.
could have been, we super lucked out. When the truck arrived in Texas, we couldn't go get it. So we had to pay for it to get shipped to us. So it was an extra cost. All the events we were going to work and had lined up were canceled. And then I fell back on a job from like 10 years ago, something like that I used to do, where you map trails for the Department of the Interior. And, that's what we've been doing since. And it's just, we're really lucky that we found some sort of work to kind of keep us afloat and keep us going.
Yeah. So just a couple minutes on that. The work that you did while you were away, that's something that you were pretty upfront about on your video that you were on your YouTube videos, Dirt Sunrise YouTube channel, that you two were trying to do everything you could, anything you can to earn some income while you're away, make this lifestyle actually work. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we initially started doing the videos just because I wanted to, back when I used to do side trips, we'd write like a blog and post a few photos here and there just to remember the trips. For this, we decided we'd try doing video, and it was mainly for, family and friends and just to check it out. But we sort of had that inkling, that thought of, but what if this was our life? What if, this might be a California listener only reference, but what if we were the Huell Hauser of sort of the world, traveling around and looking at stuff and going, look at this and look at that, and that could be, we could create our own sort of job in that sense. So we knew, and we have throughout the whole trip, we've flown home 3 times during the trip to work one of the Overland Expos, some Overland rallies, and some military training. And that kept us afloat on the trip. But the videos increasingly help us. I wouldn't say it's close to being.
It's a slow burn, but
It's a slow burn,
yeah, we're going for the long game on that one, I think, but it does definitely, fill the gas tank. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was kind of the thing is once we realized that people were excited about the trip and, somebody would send us $10 and go, hey, have a beer on me. And we're like, hey, that helps. That's like another day's worth of travel. And so the trip went from, this was initially a year trip, and then it was 2 years. And now, we're home, but we're still living in the truck. And so to us, the trip's really still going and we're just working and saving until the world reopens. And then I don't really know where we're going to go next, but
we're definitely going somewhere.
And so did that actually work? Did people actually buy you a taco and buy you a beer? Because I love that idea.
Yeah, it was so cool. People would say, we have one buddy who goes, all right, I'm putting $20 in there, but no food and no fuel. You have to buy booze or something, some joke or something like that. We had, mostly people we've never met just saying, here's $5. I, have 5 years till retirement, but I'm loving watching it because it's keeping me excited until I go. So here's a few bucks. And
we knew how important that aspect, I think, was for us before we left,
Yeah.
Of watching kind of other people's adventures on YouTube and looking and going, oh, we could do this. Look where they are. It's so exciting. And it keeps that inspiration going. And so it's really cool to be on the other side of that, kind of giving that to people as well.
I think, if you're working a normal job right now, like we were, and the people at your office may not be the ones who inspire you to keep doing it. They're the ones that might say you're crazy or it'll never work or you'll go broke. But for us, when we were in that environment, watching YouTube videos of people sailing around the world, people driving around the world, riding motorcycles, whatever it was, we kept looking at that going, but they're doing it. But they're doing it. So maybe it's not that crazy, or maybe it is doable. And so it's kind of cool that we can be that for a few folks. And like Kelsey said, it's slowly growing, but we were amazed. We opened up a Patreon account halfway through the trip, and somebody I'd never met said, years ago I was doing an off-road trip and you made a bunch of maps and sent me like a giant paragraph of info for my trip, and it really helped me out. And so I've been watching you guys. Here's like $2 a month or something. And I went, oh my God,
we're doing it. It's working.
We're doing it. It's $2, but it doesn't matter how much. It's more of the proof of concept. And as long as it's always going the right direction, I think we know there's a chance. So.
Well, let's end it there. Tell us how people can be in touch with you, stay in touch with you, follow your adventures, and hopefully kick that $2 a month into your booze or gas. I mean, you're traveling in a FJ80. I can't say the Z part. Those are not sippers. Those drink.
No.
Gas is our number one, or fuel, I should say, is our number one expense. But we chose that name, Dirt Sunrise, for a lot of reasons, but in one, because nothing else really comes up under it. So we have the website, Dirt Sunrise, Instagram, and then the YouTube account. And we try to post something every single week. So we're working during the day to be on the trail, but then at night we're making and editing videos and getting them up there for folks. And they'll always be free. We're not trying to charge folks. And if people are saving for their adventure, keep saving. But if folks have a couple extra bucks and feel like they appreciate what we're doing, that's awesome too.
Yeah. So you can find everything just dirtsunrise.com, and then that links back to all social media and everything we have. So.
Well, I really appreciate you spending some time with Slow Baja. We'll get those links up on the show notes, and look forward to following your adventure. And do you have an idea? Are you forming a plan on where to go next?
We are. I think the world's going to tell us where we're going next, because we've got ideas and we've met friends from a lot of neat continents, and we're kind of itching to go. But I think it's going to depend what opens first and what we can make happen. But we're excited to head out again. So.
Well, Tim and Kelsey from Dirt Sunrise, I really wish you well and look forward to following you. And thanks for spending some time with Slow Baja. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Hey, you guys know what to do. Please help us by subscribing, sharing, rating, all that stuff. And if you missed anything, you can find the links in the show notes at slowbaja.com. I'll be back before you know it. And if you want to receive notices on new episodes, please follow Slow Baja on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for you old folks.